What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best entertainment-related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. StarCraft 2 is now 10 years old, guys, and now it being the 10-year anniversary officially of StarCraft 2, I think we can start looking at what does the future look like in this franchise. So let's talk about it. So guys, I have talked ad nauseum on here on the YouTube channel about the future of StarCraft, that being StarCraft 3, which you guys can check out all of that content here on the YouTube channel. But what I wanted to talk about is how StarCraft 2 turning 10 years old, how that can lead or greenlight, which it probably already did greenlight, StarCraft 3. Let's talk about it. So guys, obviously between StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, if we cut to the chase here, it was 10 years between those two games. Then, now with StarCraft 2 to StarCraft 3, it would be 10 years essentially. Now look, it hasn't been 10 years since we got StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void, which is the last expansion in of course, in StarCraft 2. However, since this game, came out with Wings of Liberty, it's been 10 years. So with that, guys, if we go based on that current trajectory, we can see that every 10 years we should be getting a new StarCraft title. However, we haven't got a StarCraft 3 announced as of yet, and it's hard to say when this title is going to get announced. However, I do believe the 10-year anniversary of StarCraft 2 this year at BlizzCon would be a huge way to open up the presentation at BlizzCon, which will probably, of course, I would assume, I know it's been canceled at this point, but if they did a virtual BlizzCon or something of that sort, I believe that they could do really well with showing off StarCraft 3. Just a sneak peek teaser that it is coming, and I think that it would absolutely blow up the StarCraft community. I think StarCraft as a whole, guys, is looking for something, but I think the community as a whole has become complacent with StarCraft 2. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because StarCraft 2 is great. It holds up really well even to this day. But in order for this franchise to continue moving in and continuing to transcend gaming, there needs to be continuations of this franchise. Look, StarCraft 2 was a pioneer in esports, in my opinion. It absolutely helped grow esports to where it is today. And the real-time strategy genre has really kind of gone to the wayside, to the first-person shooters and other games that have come out. But I think StarCraft 3 could, in a significant way, just bring back so much of that old glory, but it also would be that fresh start for StarCraft, because StarCraft 2 had a shaky history. Lots of sponsors left during the match-fixing scandal, which no one in the StarCraft community likes to talk about, but these are things that happen, guys. These are facts. And so esports, even though it was transcending esports, it had issues along the way, that being the match-fixing scandal and such, and it really hurt StarCraft 2. Even to this day, it's not as big of an esport as a lot of these other esports out there. It has a very passionate community that would move over to StarCraft 3, I believe, in a heartbeat if it were announced. So where are we at? Well, StarCraft 3, guys, there's been rumblings, there's been talks. The StarCraft 3 movement is growing at this point, and so I believe that we will get an announcement this year or maybe even next year. It's hard to say. I believe the 10-year anniversary is a perfect time to kind of reveal that, look, StarCraft 3 is being worked on. It might not come out for a couple of years, but it is going to be coming out in the foreseeable future. And similar to like Diablo, and when they announced the new Diablo game, even though we didn't have like necessarily an exact release date, it's just showing us that it is coming, and that's a huge deal. So what I'm hoping for, guys, is that StarCraft 3 does come out and we get an announcement this year, and I believe that the 10-year anniversary of StarCraft 2 will lead us to StarCraft 3 inevitably. But it really comes down to the community. They've stated in the past that they would make more StarCraft games if the community wanted it. And so I believe that the movement's growing, and I think that we just have to voice our opinion to Blizzard and let them know that we want a StarCraft 3 at this point, which would really help, I believe, just continue growing the StarCraft, just community as a whole, and it could continue transcending gaming as well as esports. And look, guys, they've been working on StarCraft. I mean, we know this. I mean, Blizzard was working on 2 first-person shooter games. One was called StarCraft Ghost, I believe, and the other was an untitled StarCraft first-person shooter. Both were first-person shooters, which is interesting, but they both got canceled. And so what I'm getting at, though, is that even though they were canceled, they were working on StarCraft stuff. So there's things that are going to be coming out here within the StarCraft IP at some point or another. Hopefully we get a real-time strategy. Hopefully we do get a first-person shooter. Hopefully we get a mobile game. Just more ways that we can connect with the franchise. But I think that it needs to continue evolving, that being StarCraft, if it wants to continue into the foreseeable future. And so I love StarCraft, guys. I want to see its continued success, and I believe the way that we move forward with growing the community, growing the fan base that is StarCraft, there has to be a StarCraft 3. We can't be afraid of, going into, StarCraft 3 and being, obviously there's going to be a lot of people who are very skeptical, nervous about, is this going to be as good as StarCraft 2 and such. All I will say is that in order for us to continue to evolve, we have to have, further games in this franchise. And so with that, guys, that leads me to just, kind of passing this question on to you all. Because StarCraft 2 now is 10 years old, will that lead to StarCraft 3? At least a StarCraft 3 announcement this year or next year. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And for more StarCraft 3 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. When we talk about games and developers out there that took a lot of real chances with their games and IPs, one of those, in my opinion, really close to the top of the list is God of War and what Sony Santa Monica decided to do with this game. Kind of going away from the traditions of God of War, which was already a massive franchise as a whole, and kind of taking a new, almost approach to God of War when it was released. And what I got to say, guys, is I love that they took this risk and it really paid off for them. What I will say, though, is moving into God of War 2 or whatever the next God of War game is called, which we all know is being worked on at this point in time, there are certainly some things that I would like to see come back. There's certainly some things that I would like changed. So in this segment of the show, I want to talk about the top 5 things that we want in God of War 2, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about this in the comment section down below, whether you agree or disagree with my opinions here. So let's get into it. So coming in, guys, at number 1 for me, I really want God of War 2, or whatever this God of War is called. We're going to call it God of War 2 at this point in time, but I really want to see God of War 2 continue right where God of War 1 left off for us. I want to see a direct continuation moving forward, even if it's like a few months or a year after the events of God of War 1. I really want to see a direct continuation. I think that where they were going, especially with some of the cliffhangers that they left us on in God of War 1, I really think that leading us into this game, kind of continuing right where it left off, would really it would keep us in line with where they're trying to go and kind of tell us this story from a narrative perspective. So I really want them to continue right where they left off in God of War 1. That leads me to number 2, which, guys, my biggest complaint with God of War 1 was some of the environments. Now look, the landscapes and such were beautiful. When we were playing this game, the graphics were incredible. However, one of my biggest complaints about the game was that it just didn't feel like there was a lot of variety as far as the environments are concerned. It felt like a lot of, snowy elements. You're in the mountains a lot, and so it was like it felt like a lot of snow, a lot of like cold environments throughout the course of the game. Sure, they had a little bit of some variety, but I would really want more variety here in God of War 2. Lots of variety where you're going through, tropical rainforests and just all different places throughout the course of the world. What it does for me, at least, is I'm able to explore more and learn more about this world that we're in. In God of War 1, it felt more boxed in where there wasn't as much, even though there was ways that you could explore and such. It just kind of felt that, it felt like you were in the same place consistently throughout the course of the game. I just want there to be more variety here in God of War 2. And, I think that kind of leads you to even more, further exploration of those areas and having just different things that you can do along the journey. That leads me, guys, into number 3, which I think one of the big things with these games that's going to be important is we have familiarity, that being like, current characters that are coming back, some enemies that are coming back, bosses, weapons, things of that nature come back that look familiar to us from God of War. But I think it's going to be really important that there are new characters, new enemies, new and of course the new environments, new bosses, new weapons that you get at your disposal, continuing to evolve from what they left off with God of War 1. Here with God of War 2, I want to see some similarities to the first one, but I also want to see some significant differences that kind of move the story and the way that we traverse the world moving forward. And that gets me, guys, to number 4. My second biggest complaint about God of War 1 was, outside of not having a ton of variety in the environments, one of my biggest, issues was after you're done beating the game, there's nothing else to really do after you beat the game, right? I played the game 2 times through. And the second time, my second playthrough, I went ahead and looked for a bunch of different collectibles and such that I didn't get the first time. But what I'm getting at is that I really want there to be some form of multiplayer and some form of co-op where you're able to play with your friends after you're done beating the campaign, whether we're talking from a PvE perspective, even PvP. I think this game has a lot of customization options and such. As you kind of go through the course of the story, you're able to upgrade things, and there's a lot of skill trees and such. So I think that this is primed for something like a PvE where you're going up against waves and waves of enemies with your friends, or playing against other people out there in the world. I think it's really important that we continue to see the evolution here, because I even know that God of War sold really well. I think that what would help it sell even better with God of War 2 is having multiplayer and more ways that you can come back to the game and play, and just more ways that you can continue to connect with this franchise and the lore, the story. All of that is really important, guys. Whether you're playing the story, multiplayer, co-op, having a full package, guys, also really it justifies the $60 price tag. That leads me, guys, to number 5, which I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I really want there to be, as we're traveling through the game, obviously, it's great having, these great, landscapes, and having, different things that you can, as you're traveling, seeing a bunch of different places. But I think from God of War 1 to God of War 2, I'd like to have more things that we can do along the journey. That being, a bunch of side quests. Even though they had side quests, what I'm getting at is having more things to do, having more people that you can come up to and talk to, learn more about the towns, the areas that you're in, all kinds of history is really important. So even more ways that you can, as you're traveling through the story and the campaign as a whole, you are learning more as you go, from a standpoint of, collectibles, but having just more things you can do along the journey that can further help you, customize your character, or help you learn more about this world that is like a living, breathing place. And so with that, guys, those are the 5 things that I really want to see in God of War 2 from God of War 1. And don't get me wrong, God of War 1 I thought was great. I thought overall, guys, I really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as some people did. However, I will say it was the best God of War game I've ever played. So out of all the other ones that I've ever played, and with this new version or new take on God of War, I gotta say I like it the most. I just want them to kind of evolve it over time, because I really think that they've got something special here. And so these are what I would like to see in God of War 2. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys want to see in God of War 2? Let me know. And for more God of War 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. Halo has always been a really important franchise, I believe, in gaming as a whole, and even has been important in the esports scene and kind of evolving it over time. And so what I wanted to go ahead and do, guys, in this segment of the show is talk about the top 5 things that we want in Halo Infinite. After we got further information, we of course saw, the gameplay reveal and what it's all going to look like. And there's certainly things that I like, there's certainly things that I dislike. It was parts that felt underwhelming and parts that I thought looked great. And so I wanted to go ahead and give you guys the top 5 things that I want to see in Halo Infinite. I'd love to hear what you guys think of the comment section down below. Some of you may disagree, some of you may agree with what I say as far as my opinion, so I'd love to hear yours down there in that comment section. So let's get into it. So at number 1, guys, for me, you know, this may be controversial and people may not like this, but I truly believe that here with Halo Infinite, they need to wrap up Master Chief's story. And the reason is, guys, is because I believe that over time, the longer this series goes and the more that you rely on just Master Chief, I feel like it kind of is going to hold this series back somewhat. I'll give you an example. When I look at the Gears of War franchise, which is another one of my favorite franchises of all time, Marcus Phoenix, I absolutely loved him as a character. I think he's one of the greatest video game characters of all time. However, when we got to, you know, when the torch was passed essentially from Epic Games over to the Coalition, and they were given the task to continue the Gears of War franchise in the future, you know, when they created Gears of War 4, you know, the torch was passed from Marcus Phoenix to JD Phoenix, his son. And I thought that there was you know, I was very skeptical about that at first. But then when we see that, you know, and we've played it out now, I love their decision to do that, but also keep, you know, Marcus as a side character in the story. And that continues onwards with Gears 5, where JD passes the torch to Kate Diaz. You take the helm as Kate Diaz, and of course JD's still there, and so is Marcus. What I'm getting at, guys, is there comes a point where you need to see the finalization of that character's story. I'm not saying necessarily that you have to kill Master Chief off or something like that, but I think there needs to come a point where the torch is passed to another character. And so Master Chief, I know we kind of saw this in Halo 5 and a lot of people didn't like it, but I think if you did it well enough where in Halo Infinite you kind of introduce some new characters, which we'll get to here in a sec, and you start seeing what the fan base likes as far as which characters are really beloved by other people, that could be a really interesting concept moving into the next iteration of Halo after Infinite. So that's at number 1. Number 2 for me, guys, that I just alluded to, is having new characters, new enemies, new locations, having new weaponry we can use. And obviously, guys, from that gameplay reveal, we saw, for the most part, new characters. We saw that there's going to be, you know, new enemies. However, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of, it doesn't look like there's a lot of change. It looks like obviously we know who our villain is at this point, the main villain. We know that there's going to be brutes and jackals and grunts and such that are making their return. I'd like to see some new enemies come into the fray, though. I think that's going to be important as well. I get the idea that they want to, you know, give a kudos to the past Halo games, but I really think in order for this series to continue moving forward is just to really see that there are similarities, but there's certainly differences as well. The locations, it's hard to say. I mean, I want us to be able to go on multiple worlds. I want us to explore a lot. Obviously, with this open world setting, I'm really hoping that there's a number of different planets that you can, you know, obviously explore around. And if this is, you know, much bigger than the other games, I'm really hoping that there's more enemies and you know, new enemies that we're going up against, as well as new characters, which it seems like we're going to get new characters, guys, in this game. But I just really am hoping that there's a lot of beloved characters that we really enjoy throughout the course of Halo Infinite. That leads me, guys, into number 3. I think it's really important that 343, you know, Industries, with this game, they are consistently updating this game after launch in a major way. And I'm really going to bring up, like, the graphics, guys. The graphics of Halo Infinite, I've stated, I really actually liked the way that overall the graphics looked from a landscape perspective. I know some people really criticized it. I thought the landscapes looked pretty good for Halo, right? In the Halo universe, what they did, sure, it's not, you know, super comparable to like other open world games, but when we look at Halo as a whole and this big open world that they're kind of building here, I liked what I saw. I did not, though, like the graphics around the different, some of the characters, some of the enemies, like the grunts and the brutes and the jackals and such. I did not like those graphics. I did not think that those have gone very well. And so what I'm getting at, guys, is I'm hoping that they continue to update this game as we go. From a graphical perspective, sure, they might not be able to do significant things, but I think that there are things to help along the way. I just think, guys, that this is a game that needs to do really well for Xbox, but it also needs to do really well for 343 Industries. And sure, at the end of the day, the graphics don't make or break a game, but they do definitely, they affect the experience as a whole. And so what I'm getting at is I really want Halo Infinite to, after launch, they continue to update this game in a major way, especially when there's things that the community is stating that need to be changed about it. They are on top of it. That leads me, guys, into number 4, which is the esports scene is very important, in my opinion, for Halo Infinite as a whole. And obviously, we know what happened with Halo 5, and it was an absolute disaster. Halo Infinite needs to have a dedicated esports, in a major way. The esports scene around Halo needs to be something that is a huge dedication to 343 Industries, and I think that they've stated that they're taking it very seriously, which is really good to hear. But I think it's very important, guys, that Halo Infinite has a real support system around the esports scene and multiplayer as a whole. And that kind of leads us back, with graphics and such, but really just making sure that things are changed in a timely manner. I believe, personally, that 343 Industries has learned what they did right, what they did wrong, and what they can do different moving forward from Halo 5 to Halo Infinite. So even from a graphical standpoint, if the character models aren't as good, as long as the game is good, as long as the multiplayer is good, people will play it. And so at the end of the day, guys, that is, really important. This needs to have a very dedicated esports scene. Halo esports, I miss it. I want to see this come back with in a major way, guys. That leads me, guys, to number 5, which I think at the conclusion of Halo Infinite, it's going to be really important that this game sets up the next generation of Halo games for the future of Xbox. It's very important the way that they end this story or end this game, whether it's on a cliffhanger, whether it is pretty, seems finalized, this sets up the future of the Halo games for Xbox, and I think it's going to be really important because we want Halo to continue, guys. This is a franchise that's very beloved by many. This is one of the, this is one of the staples of gaming as a whole, especially for Xbox, but just as for gaming as a whole. It's very important, guys, that we see that continuation happen here, and I'm excited. I really am. I'm excited about Halo Infinite still, even though there seem to be some issues. We got to wait till we get our hands on the game to really see what it's all about. But nonetheless, I'm excited. I'll give you guys a couple of honorable mentions as well, guys. I really want to see in this game more ways that when we come to the multiplayer, you're able, the rank up system kind of reminds you a little bit of like Halo Reach, where there's like, I would love to have the inheritor rank. I'd love to have, really, more than anything, more customization where the things within the game are earnable items over payable items. And so I want to see things that we can earn within the game, having a lot of different ranks and emblems and ways you can customize your characters from a standpoint of earning those things over, paying for them. And I think that's really important, guys. But yeah, having just further customization is kind of other things that are on the side that I really thought are important as well, that I thought I would make an honorable mention. But having things that are earnable over payable. Having payable items is fine, guys. Having monetization within the game is fine, but I think that it shouldn't take away from people trying to earn stuff that you can just pay for in a store. I think that's really important for Halo Infinite. But with that being said, guys, let me know in the comment section down below, what are you guys most excited about with Halo Infinite? What are the things that you guys want to see in Halo Infinite? And for more Halo Infinite content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. After the Xbox Game Showcase, one of those titles that is incredibly intriguing, was intriguing to me at first because I'm a huge horror fan, but even more so now knowing a little bit more about it, is The Medium. This is a game, guys, that really kind of wowed me at the Xbox Game Showcase, and I'm really excited about it. I wanted to give you guys in this segment of the show everything that we know now about The Medium. So let's get into it. So guys, next generation terror will be unleashed. This is an article written by Samuel Tolbert of Windows Central. During the May 7 showcase for third-party Xbox Series X games, one title was revealed by Polish studio Bloober Team. It's called The Medium, and it's being developed exclusively for Xbox Series X and high-end PCs. While there's still a lot we don't know, we've compiled all the information that we do. What is The Medium? The Medium is a horror game being developed by Bloober Team, a Polish studio behind Layers of Fear, Observer, and Blair Witch. The Medium is one of the first games that we know of announced exclusively for next-gen hardware. Now, what's interesting to me, guys, is first of all, Bloober Team, these guys, the first game I ever played by them was Blair Witch, and I gotta say, I really enjoyed Blair Witch overall. It's a pretty linear experience, and overall, and it's a very interesting one to say the least, but I really enjoyed it, and so I was excited to see what was going to be their next project. I love that they're doing something that isn't already a franchise. This is something, unless this is of somehow or another, but it's interesting that they're taking, their own take on this type of style. Now, as far as the gameplay is concerned, The Medium was initially conceived as a project all the way back in 2012. Unlike past Bloober titles, The Medium is not a first-person game, but instead uses fixed camera angles like in Until Dawn. You play as Marianne, a woman haunted by visions of a child's death. The game begins with Marianne traveling to an abandoned hotel resort. And then the two worlds interact in what Bloober teases is a super secret feature only possible on next-gen hardware. I can say it's something to do with how the worlds interact with each other. And we've obviously seen this, guys, from, it's kind of like split screen. And so what Marianne is seeing here, you kind of can go back and forth, it looks like, between the worlds almost. One's in the real world, one is in this this other world. I guess it's a fictitious world, but obviously it almost looks like the gateway to hell or something like that. A very interesting concept, to say the least. Now, according to game producer Jacek Ziba, there are essentially no loading times, which is pretty awesome. Now, the dual reality gameplay, guys, looks really cool. This dual reality, I thought when I saw that at the Xbox Series or at the Xbox Game Showcase, I gotta say, man, that concept is so cool. It reminds me like of the games like A Way Out, where it's like there's a couple of different ways, like a couple characters, you can play their gameplay. Except with this, though, it's the same character but is experiencing different things, and this could really transcend this type of style, guys. I could definitely see more games like this being made in the future, especially if it's a really good experience for us players. Now, The Medium is not coming to Xbox One. This is a next-generation game, and according to Bloober Team, it wouldn't be possible to develop on current-generation hardware. It's possibly because the high-speed solid-state drive in the Xbox Series X is needed to quickly transition between the physical world and the spirit world. So it's a spirit world, guys. It really looks like hell, in my opinion. Like that was kind of the concept, but the spirit world, very interesting to say the least. According to Bloober, it has to do with aforementioned super secret feature. Is The Medium coming to PS5? No, at least not right now. The Medium has been announced for Xbox Series X and PC, but other platforms are listed, but no other platforms are listed at this time. This is not an Xbox Global Publishing game, meaning it's developed and published by Bloober Team, and Bloober Team's previous game, Blair Witch, was a timed Xbox and PC exclusive, so it is possible that The Medium will come to PS5 at a later date. So most likely it will, guys, I would assume. However, it's hard to say. And then as far as the release date goes, guys, The Medium is scheduled to release on Xbox Series X and PC sometime in holiday of 2020. When it does arrive, it'll also be available on Xbox Game Pass, another Xbox Game Pass game, guys. I am, obviously I'm a huge advocate of Xbox Game Pass, but with that, guys, I think that the things that I'm most excited about with this game is just really checking out this dual reality and what it's all about. Going between the real world and the spirit world is going to be something unlike anything that we've probably ever really experienced. Now, I'm sure there's other games out there, but I just thought the way that they showed the camera angles as far as what you're doing on this side, this is what you're seeing here. It could be a really trippy experience overall. But I'm excited about this. I really am. I don't believe I've ever played any kind of game like this before, and that's something that's really exciting for me. And the fact it's coming to Xbox Game Pass, so if you have that, subscription, guys, you're gonna be able to get this game and just play it, just download it and play. I gotta say, this is going to be a really interesting one, especially for horror fans out there. This looks like a creepy experience. It's got, some interesting vibes to it, guys, of other horror games, but it's got its own, kind of twist to it because of this dual reality. And so with that, guys, I'm excited about it. I'll be giving you guys more information as it comes out about The Medium. But what do you guys think about The Medium? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more The Medium content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.